Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. This is Eisenherz, and today I want to talk about a commander that produces a ton of mana and can be an infinite mana outlet. Let's talk about Kinnan. But because I'm not an expert on Kinnan, I invited a special guest, someone who's one of the most proficient Kinnan brewers and pilots in all the cEDH community. Don't take my word for it, even Higher said so just a few weeks ago on Twitter. Please welcome Robin, or as you might know him, PingMeisterPong.
Hey everybody, it's Robin, aka PingMeisterPong. I'm a dedicated Kinnan cEDH player. You can find me on the Kinnan Discord server, on the cEDH University server as a Kinnan mentor, or on Twitter at PingMeisterPong.
Hey Robin, it's really nice to have you here. So without further ado, let's start with Kinnan. Tell us about Kinnan, please.
So Kinnan is a 2/2 human druid for Simic. He reads, whenever you tap a non-land permanent for mana, add 1 mana of any type that permanent produced. So you get an extra mana of Finton Elves, of Mana Crypts, but not of stuff like your lands, right? He also has a second ability. For 5 in Simic, you get to look at your top 5 cards of your library and put a non-human card onto the battlefield. So what we've got here in our command zone is a basically free to cast commander, because you spend 2 mana and get, if you have 2 or more dogs out, the mana right back. So Kinnan combos, he ramps and he draws. That's obviously a lot of directions to pivot into, and from those unique abilities, Midrange Kinnan, Turbo Kinnan and Stax Kinnan established in the cEDH community.
Can you please go into a little bit more detail about those 3 different archetypes? So you said we have Turbo, Midrange and Stax, right? Can you please explain those?
Turbo Kinnan is a proactive Kinnan list that seeks to either assemble Kinnan plus Basalt, Isoconceptor plus Dramatic Reversal, or Hullbreaker Horror Roots. It is so strong because Kinnan is in our command zone, right? And we are in blue, which means we have a lot of artifact tutors, like Transmute Artifact, Reshape, Tetzeret, to name a few. Mainly, the deck focuses on Kinnan plus Basalt. It uses Basalt's tap ability for 4 because of Kinnan, and untaps for 3 to generate infinite colorless mana and sink that mana into an outlet such as Trust Yours or Energy Refractor to get access to our whole deck and win from there. It also plays Isoconceptor and Dramatic Reversal because that combo just fits the list, right? Kinnan gives us mana, so we have an easier way to Isochrone. Also, Isoconceptor and Dramatic Reversal layer with our tutors. We have the Artifact tutors and Mystical tutors solve the equation, so we've got a few instant sorcery tutors as well. Hullbreaker Horror is just, it's 1 card, right? And Kinnan helps surprisingly a lot to get there. It's such an explosive list that you can easily pop a turn to Hullbreaker Horror and then just follow up with any spell, right, to start the loop. Pros of this list are the synergy Kinnan brings. As I just said, it's a free combo piece and it supports the other combos, so that obviously is really strong. And as for a turbo list, is not as all in as like Rock Silas list, right? They play a lot of rituals, then a Wishclaw, a tutor or something, and they play so aggressively. And sure, in Turbo Kinnan you play aggressive as well, but if your Transmute Artifact got countered, that's fine. We still have a lot of dogs and mana, and we can go from there. Despite its many pros, the list obviously has its cons. It's very vulnerable to popular stacks pieces such as Rule of Law effects, Drenif, and obviously Collector Oof, which shuts off every combo we run. Also, there's a lot of space for our opponents to interact with removal and interactive spells, because Kinnan is a creature, first of all. Basalt Monolith is an artifact, and the spell that brings us Basalt Monolith is most of the time something like Transmute Artifact, an instant or sorcery. So our opponents have space to interact on like each level. It's really tough to combo if you know they have some kind of interaction, because we have artifacts, we have creatures, and most of the time instant sorceries. So there's obviously a lot of space to interact with.
Okay, so what I heard is that Turbo Kinnan tries to combo off very early and very reliably, so it plays more combo pieces and more tutors to get there. Is that correct?
Yes, that is true.
Okay, so how do you play Midrange Kinnan then?
Midrange, as it is as a term, means you sacrifice pace for like better card quality. That means if you compare the list, for example, it's not a lot of difference. I think it's like 20-ish cards in difference. But if you take a look at the difference, you will see it has a lot of cuts like Elvish Spirit Guide, Jeweled Lotus, Carpet, Brainstorm, Gitaxian Probe, right? A lot of those tempo cuts that really give you pace in the early turns. They are missing from mid-range Kinnan lists because in mid-range Kinnan you get to play those cards that often don't make the cut for Turbo Kinnan because they are too slow, such as Bloom Tender, Seedborn Muse, Jingy Taxias, Wandering Archaic, stuff like that, were of invention to enable instant speed Basalt monoliths and so on. It also, the probably biggest difference is that midrange Kinnan isn't on Isoconceptor plus Dramatic Reversal, but on the Freed from the Real lines and Permanence Aura. Because the Isochron Dramatic Reversal Scepter, although it's a solid combo, it is vulnerable to Dreniv and Collector Oof, and as for a midrange game plan, you will see those cards more often. A Sanctum Weaver plus Freed from the Real is harder to interact with, right? Also, Kinnan gives you like a wider range of our aura targets, for example Birds of Paradise, those will work, and Bloom Tender gets expanded by a blue because it works with the other lines, but it generates infinite green. With Kinnan out, it generates infinite Simic as well. When people look at the midrange list, they often ask me and Nick. Nick is the guy who helped me with the midrange list. They ask us why there's like stuff like Manglehorn, Void Winnower missing, and the point is that you could technically include them as mid-range pieces, but the list ultimately is a combo list and doesn't stick to stacks out the board. The cons I would say to this list is that it's Simic mid-range and in my opinion can't compete with other S-tier mid-range decks when it comes down. When it comes down to stopping the turbo player and then the mid-range plan is going on, I think personally you can't compete with like S-tier mid-range decks such as Kenriff, Tracius Bruce, Timna Tracios, stuff like that. I think they will outgrind you, and that is one of the biggest cons I would say for mid-range.
Alright, so what I get from that is that you want to be a little slower than the turbo list, but have more reliable and more harder to interact with combos in the deck. Is that correct?
Yes, I would say it's a good old turbo or mid-range, right? It comes down to personal preference, which one to play.
You just mentioned that you don't want to Stax out the game, but you also said that there's a Stax Kinnan version. So how does that play? What cards do you play in that? How does that function?
Stax Kinnan is a list that aggressively develops a mana base on the early turns and then follows it up with a devastating stacks piece through Kinnan's unique abilities. Which means we either get to cast it because Kinnan gives you so much mana, or you activate Kinnan and find the stacks piece. In the best case, it's something like a Void Winnower on as early as turn 2. Usually you have a turn 3 Kinnan activation and then find something like a Lodestone Golem, right? Something to slow the game down. Unlike the first two archetypes, Stax Kinnan uses the commander not as a combo piece, but as a ramp and draw spell. The stacks it deploys are most of the time asymmetrical, which means it only affects your opponents. Best example again, it's Void Winnower. They don't get to cast stuff, but you still do. There are still symmetrical stacks pieces such as Lodestone Golem, Arcane Laboratory, Trinisphere, but Kinnan helps us break parity on that because we either don't cast anything, just activate Kinnan, or we have so much mana that a Lodestone Golem, etc. won't affect us. What really stands out that Stax Kinnan is super resilient because you play a lot of creatures and artifacts, right? A Curse Totem or a Null Rod isn't as devastating as in midrange or turbo. The adaptive part in Stax Kinnan is that depending on your meta, let's say you have a midrange meta, right? You get to put in Kogla, Torn Mammoth, stuff like that. And if you have a faster meta, you get to put in more Lodestone Golem effects or Nullstone Gargoyles. This is what I really like about Stax Kinnan, that it's so adaptive. The problem Stax Kinnan brings, I would say, are the mulligans, because when mulliganing, what you really look for is A, only mana, or B, some mana and a impactful stacks piece, depending on the pot. And the problem is, you either don't get any of the stacks pieces you want when mulliganing, or like the big guys which you can cast either way. So a Multi 4 is like not rare in Stax Kinnan. Also, for a stacks tag, it's missing some impactful and keyword stacks pieces such as Opposition Agent, Dreniv Magistrate, a Livala effect would be nice, and obviously Collector Oof. Green in cEDH means access to Collector Oof, but due to our unique mana based, which means a lot of artifacts and basalt. We can't run that. It's an option, but it's never the way to go, honestly, which is really sad, because as a mix Stax, you're dropping oof is hard.
Alright, so we have Turbo Kinnan, we have Midrange Kinnan, and we have Stax Kinnan. But what kind of general gameplay advice can you give us when piloting Kinnan? Are there any relevant tips and tricks one should know when starting to play Kinnan?
Well, when it comes to tips and tricks, there's obviously a lot of cool shenanigans you can do. Like, the first thing that comes to mind is not tapping your dogs for mana when casting Kinnan, right? But I think the most valuable tip I can give is to become aware of what position Kinnan has to you in the deck you play. If you play Turbo, don't think Kinnan of a way in ramping you or drawing you cards. It's a combo piece and a combo piece only. If you play it on like Curve because you have the mana too, but don't have a cool follow-up play or super extra much mana he gives you to have a follow-up play, it's probably not worth it. Cast Kinnan when you try to combo off, because Kinnan is a kill-on-side commander. When it comes to Stax Kinnan, on the other hand, you can freely cast Kinnan because your opponents want to keep their actions for the Stax pieces, right? Also, Kinnan getting removed isn't super lethal because we run such a high amount of mana spells. We get to easily cast them again and then get right back into the game.
Okay, so when you use Midrange or Turbo Kinnan, you only want to play him in a scenario where you can reliably win the game very soon. And in a Stax list, you can just drop him early and go from there. If he gets removed, you can easily recast him. If he gets stolen, that's not so important because you have so much mana usually that you can just work through the Stax pieces and drop even more Stax pieces. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay, so if I want to dive even deeper into Kinnan, where can I get more information?
Well, first of all, there's the Kinnan Discord server. Feel free to join, it's a very nice and large community. I will also hang in some lists and primers, which you can link down below. So if you're interested in Kinnan primers, etc., then feel free to check them out.
Alright, perfect. I will link the Discord server and of course all the relevant Kinnan deck lists and primers in the description box down below. Robin, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to explain Kinnan to us a little bit better.
Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure having you. Thank you guys for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to give it a like, share the video with your friends, and of course don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Drop a comment down below. Join the Discord server if you haven't already. We play a lot of cEDH, so you can join us. And if you want to support my channel even more, please consider becoming a patron. Thank you for watching. This is Eisenherz and
Auf Wiedersehen.